Hey, I recently set up a mini marathon of my once favorite cartoon series, SpongeBob SquarePants. And just as well preserved as the first few seasons are, the new ones are just as bad. The reason, of course, is obvious. The creators of the original animated series are no longer working on it, and the project's lead showrunner, Steven Hillenburg, passed away in 2018. But SpongeBob is an extremely profitable venture in its own right. I would guess that its main revenue comes from merchandise, toys, and other related products. And if the series were to be cancelled, it simply wouldn't be able to sell as well as it does now, despite its cult status. That's why the cartoon is still holding up, despite. Never mind that, the quality is terrible, but people watch it anyway. It's really a shame for Steven Hillenburg, who essentially dedicated himself to the project and made it such a cult classic. Prior to that, Steven had worked on the animated series Rocko's New Life, but he was passionate about creating a cartoon set in the underwater world. He brought in some of the team from Rocko's New Life, and together they created. The pilot episode was a success, and SpongeBob was given the green light. In general, the series developed its unique visual style, largely thanks to the fact that the creative team wasn't as experienced, and that allowed them to take some risks. In fact, he noted, the first season was a huge hit anyway, because it turned out to be so entertaining, and that's largely because the show combines both humor that is surreal to the point of absurdity and a childlike sensibility, which, despite its naivety, is capable of conveying even to an adult a certain, not exactly, primitive morals, of which there are plenty. And if you delve even deeper into certain episodes, it might seem that this show isn't really that childish after all. And that's what sets mass-market, run-of-the-mill animation apart from cult classics. No matter how strange or unusual the ideas may be, a work should offer you something, some room for interpretation. And the first few seasons of SpongeBob SquarePants nail it. Take the episode Ripped Pants from the first season, for example. Yeah, I picked that one on purpose. In the episode, Sandy and SpongeBob are relaxing on the beach, where Larry decides to show off his strength and do some bench presses. Sandy even manages to beat Larry in the competition, but SpongeBob runs into trouble. His pants rip from the strain of trying to lift the lightest barbell. And that's way more fun than just lounging on the beach. There you go. That's how SpongeBob finds his niche. Now he rips his trunks at every opportunity. But a joke is only funny the first 2 or 3 times. So, in trying to look cool in the eyes of others, the protagonist ends up becoming a true outcast and even loses his friends. The series offers food for thought. No matter what the situation, you should always stay true to yourself. It's important to remember that people love you for who you really are. SpongeBob tried to be anyone but himself, all for a few seconds of laughter from strangers. Or take one of my favorite episodes, The Idiot Box. In it, SpongeBob and Patrick order a TV just for the box it comes in. For the characters, the box takes the place of the TV, because imagination is far better than a screen full of pictures. Squidward is skeptical about this, but personally, she hears strange sounds coming from the box, yet it is still empty, and Sponge assures Squidward that it's all in her imagination. With a little imagination, even a simple box can turn into absurd. In the episode, Squidward tries to pull off the same trick, but at first he can't get it to work because he thinks the problem lies with the piece of cardboard. But once he used his imagination, Squidward managed to turn a box into a race car. The episode shows that as we get older, it becomes increasingly difficult to find wonder in the world around us and in simple things. That's why SpongeBob reminds us how important it is to keep our imagination alive, even as adults. The characters let their imaginations run wild, and this makes their dull adult lives more exciting. And that's how almost every episode begins in the early days of the series. The decline is usually attributed to the start of the 5th season, as it was the first season without Steven Hillenburg at the helm. By that point, Gubkobok had already grown into a massive franchise and released its own feature film. A movie that, incidentally, was originally intended to serve as the series finale, since the story arc of the main character, SpongeBob himself, had come to an end. He managed to shed his excessive childishness and acknowledge himself for who he is, with all his flaws, yet without losing his optimism, just as he always has. In short, the context of the series and its plot isn't just a silly kids sitcom, but an interesting work that really has become a staple of popular culture. So what's the deal with the show these days? Why are so many people complaining about its quality? How could they have ruined what the team had built? The early 2000s. It's very simple. Get rid of the contrived plot twists and crank the surrealism up to the absolute max. I'm talking about those sometimes jarring interludes that were present and before, but back then they were less intrusive and fit into the context, at least revealing something. Now though, it's just disgusting. Perhaps the plan is to create sophisticated content for children, which, these days, there's so much else out there that it's hard to capture kids' attention. Yes, that's probably true, but it would be tolerable if the new seasons had interesting storylines. Of course, some of the more recent seasons have some interesting episodes. For example, the third episode of Season 8, The Sentimental Sponge. In it, SpongeBob starts a massive fight and throws a whole bunch of useful things, including a souvenir named Pete, who accuses him of wasting things needlessly. From that point on, SpongeBob becomes far too sentimental, and he feels that every single item, including a mayonnaise jar and a piece of chewed gum, is absolutely essential. So the protagonist's house fills up with trash, and Squidvar even considers calling the sanitation police when the junk starts piling up, and out onto the street. In the end, the best solution is to take photos of all your keepsakes before throwing them away. But even here there's a catch. You end up with so many photos that you have to. They'll end up in the squatter's house. The moral of the story is this: sentimental keepsakes aren't a bad thing, but you need to know when to stop and understand the true value of things. And turning your own home into a dumping ground for memories isn't exactly... It's actually a pretty good idea. It's a cool episode, and the message seems solid. The only thing is, episodes like this are few and far between these days. I'd even say there's only one in the whole season. The main point is that SpongeBob wasn't ruined by the new animation style, but by the slapstick, the crude humor, and the fact that it was turned into a children's cartoon with no deeper meaning. And that's exactly what's so disappointing. No matter how you feel about SpongeBob, he always tried to convey some unusual ideas through simple stories, thereby shaping children's minds and instilling moral values in them. But popularity took its toll, and the cartoon turned into a factory-churned product. Oh, it's going to make a fortune. So why did SpongeBob run out of steam? If we set aside the influence of popularity and money, there's another reason, one that's probably even more significant. At one time, SpongeBob seemed like the craziest cartoon. That was on TV. Anything and everything could have happened. It featured bonfires underwater, meowing snails, flying casinos, and an elderly version of Aquaman, a journey to the Middle Ages, a future-set, mind-blowing parody, and cringe-worthy cameos by real-life actors. It's just crazy. At the same time, SpongeBob has never descended into outright trash. But most importantly, the cartoon made fun of everything and everyone, including itself. The show's creators were constantly trolling the fans. For example, they once revealed that the 7 main characters, it's the embodiment of the deadly sins. I'm telling you guys, they were really into it and were kind of like punks or something. Anyway, to repeat myself, the cartoon was a funny reflection of our everyday life. There was a good balance between childish cartoonishness and adult issues. But the question is, who would that surprise these days? SpongeBob has long since lost the charm of his original unjokey cartoon series. Now, if you don't weave some drama into the plot, who needs your absurdity? You can't just go around coming up with all sorts of nonsense unless you're biting satire, a timely issue, or simply gory trash. SpongeBob was simply milked dry, and that says it all. People will respect you if you act all high and mighty. The higher the nose, the more respect you get. Like this? Higher? Like this? Yeah, that'll do. They'll call you Respected SpongeBob. Finally, I'd also like to briefly touch on the spin-off of the main series, specifically the prequel Camp Coral, which is about the childhood of SpongeBob and the others. It might seem like we're going to be told the character's origins, since at camp, Squidward hasn't yet been crushed by the crushing weight of adult life, Patrick's brain is still more or less functioning, and Mrs. Puff hasn't started her endless trips to jail. No, that's not true. The show turned out to be completely childish, and besides, it has very few jokes, funny one-liners, or really anything else that might have made the original work. Cartoon. just the most boring and uninteresting cartoon imaginable, meant for very young children. There's also the Old Patrick Show. It's complete nonsense and I don't even want to talk about it. I already regret even bringing this up. Long story short, SpongeBob is a cash cow of a franchise that they're going to milk for all it's worth, and for a long time. The problem is that this will change how people perceive the character, and the series as a whole among the public. Things have definitely taken a turn for the worse. I'll say it again, I feel really bad for Stephen Hillenburg and everyone else involved in the original cartoon, but I'm afraid this outcome was inevitable. In today's era of corporate monopolies, and indeed, given the nature of the capitalist system as a whole, this has happened and continues to happen. And I'm afraid that's what will happen. All that's left is to go through the 5 stages of acceptance and, well, accept it. I'd like to express my immense gratitude to the original team, because watching the cartoon always puts me in a good mood. Associations. And despite everything that's going on today, in my memory, Goob Kobo will remain an appealing, interesting, funny, and just the right amount of quirky cartoon that I'll return to from time to time. I'd love to come back. Bye for now, everyone, and thanks, Stephen Hillenburg.